Hi guys, and welcome on Cheaters and Jerks. This channel is about real-life cheating stories and consequences.
One encounter led to another, each more daring than the last. I found myself in situations I never would have imagined before. Threesomes, foursomes, stolen moments in dark corners with strangers whose names I'd never know. But let's start from the beginning, right after your subscription to this channel. I never thought I'd feel this way about Mark. He's everything a girl could want. Tall, strong, devoted. But lately, I've been suffocating under the weight of his perfection. This morning, I woke up to the sound of Mark's alarm at 5 a.m. Like clockwork, he kissed my forehead, whispered, "I love you," and headed out for his morning run. I rolled over, burying my face in the pillow, trying to muffle the scream building in my throat. Don't get me wrong, I love him. But sometimes I want to shake him, to see if there's anything unpredictable hiding beneath that chiseled exterior. I dragged myself out of bed at 7, just in time to see him wolfing down his protein-packed breakfast. "Morning, babe," he said, flashing that $1,000,000 smile. "I made you a smoothie." Of course he did, because he always does. "Thanks," I mumbled, forcing a smile. I took a sip and nearly gagged. It tasted like lawn clippings and regret. "Heading to the gym," Mark announced, grabbing his bag. "I'll be home by 6. Thought we could order in, watch a movie?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Another night of healthy takeout and an action flick he'd seen 100 times. Thrilling. As soon as the door closed behind him, I dumped the smoothie down the sink. I needed coffee. Real coffee. Not that fancy bulletproof crap Mark swears by. I grabbed my phone, texting my friend Jess. "Emergency happy hour tonight?" Her reply was instant. "Hell yes, the usual spot at 5? I hesitated for a moment, guilt gnawing at me. But then I thought about another night of Mark's perfectly planned routine, and my fingers flew across the screen. I'll be there. I know I should be grateful. Mark's a good man. He'd never hurt me, never cheat. But sometimes I wonder if a little unpredictability would be worth the risk. God, what's wrong with me? I woke up feeling restless, the weight of routine pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. Mark was already gone, off to the gym for his usual morning workout. I grabbed my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen before I fired off a text to Jess. "Emergency happy hour tonight? I'm dying for some girl time." Jess replied almost instantly. "Hell yes, 7 p.m. at O'Malley's?" I grinned, already feeling a spark of excitement. "Perfect. See you there." The day crawled by, each tick of the clock reminding me of the monotony I was trapped in. By the time evening rolled around, I was buzzing with anticipation. I threw on a little black dress that I hadn't worn in ages, touched up my makeup, and headed out before Mark got home. The bar was already packed when I arrived. I spotted Jess waving from a high-top table near the window. "Damn girl," she exclaimed as I approached. "You look hot." I laughed, sliding onto the stool across from her. "Thanks, I figured why not, right?" We ordered our drinks, a gin and tonic for me, a Cosmo for Jess, and dove into catching up. It felt good to laugh, to gossip, to just be. No schedule, no expectations. "So, what's the emergency?" Jess asked, raising an eyebrow. I sighed, tracing the rim of my glass with my finger. "I don't know. I feel stuck, like I'm suffocating in my own life." Jess nodded sympathetically. "Mark?" "He's perfect," I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "And that's the problem. He's so disciplined, so focused. Everything's always the same. Wake up, go to the gym, work, come home, repeat. I don't know, something different, something exciting." "Well, hello there, ladies." A familiar voice cut through our conversation. I looked up to see Jason, a guy I knew from college, standing at our table with a cocky grin. "Mind if I join you?" I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Sure, why not?" Jason pulled up a stool, his eyes never leaving mine. "Sarah, right? It's been a while. You look incredible." I felt a flush creep up my neck. Jason was lean and wiry, nothing like Mark's imposing build, but there was something in the way he looked at me, a glint in his eye that made me feel Alive. Thanks, I managed, taking a sip of my drink to hide my smile. The conversation flowed easily, Jason's wit and charm a stark contrast to Mark's stoic demeanor. I found myself laughing more than I had in months, leaning in closer to catch his words over the din of the bar. As the night wore on, Jess excused herself, leaving Jason and me alone. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. You know, I always had a bit of a crush on you in college, he admitted, his hand brushing against mine on the table. I pulled back slightly, my heart racing. Jason, I'm with someone. He held up his hands, that devilish grin still playing on his lips. Hey, no pressure. Just thought you should know you're still the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen. I glanced at my phone, realizing how late it had gotten. I should go, I said, standing up perhaps a bit too quickly. Jason nodded, pulling out his phone. At least let me get your number, in case you ever want to catch up again. I hesitated for a moment before rattling off my number. What was the harm in that? The cool night air hit me as I stepped out of the bar, sobering me up slightly. I caught a cab home, my mind swirling with conflicting emotions. When I walked in, I found Mark sprawled on the couch, still in his workout gear. His massive chest rose and fell steadily, and he turned his head at the sound of the door, greeting me with a tired but loving smile. I leaned down to kiss his forehead, but my thoughts were still lingering on Jason's sly remarks and suggestive looks. How was your night? Mark asked, his voice husky with fatigue. Good, I replied, perhaps a bit too quickly. Just girl talk, How was your workout? Mark launched into a detailed description of his routine, but I found myself only half listening. My phone buzzed in my purse, and I knew without looking that it was Jason. As I got ready for bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The monotony that had been suffocating me now felt safe, predictable, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if that was what I wanted anymore. I climbed into bed next to Mark, his arm automatically wrapping around me, but as I drifted off to sleep, it wasn't his face I saw behind my closed eyelids. It was Jason's cocky grin and the promise of something wild and untamed. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing. Mark was already gone, probably halfway through his morning workout by now. I reached for my phone, my heart skipping a beat when I saw Jason's name on the screen. His text was simple. Last night was fun, still the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen. I read it 3 times, my stomach doing flips. After a moment's hesitation, I replied, thanking him and trying to brush it off as friendly banter. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to stop there. Over the next few days, our messages became more frequent and flirty. I found myself smiling at my phone, giggling at Jason's jokes, and eagerly awaiting his next text. Meanwhile, Mark spent hours in our garage gym, the rhythmic sounds of punching bags and his grunts filling the air. He never once questioned why I seemed glued to my phone. It was a week later when I lied to Mark for the first time. The words came out so easily, it almost scared me. I'm going to try out that new yoga class tonight, I said casually over breakfast. Probably won't be back until late. Mark nodded, barely looking up from his protein shake. Sounds good. Have fun, babe. My heart was pounding as I left the house, but not from guilt, from excitement. Jason was waiting for me at a bar across town, his eyes lighting up as I walked in. There she is, he said, standing to greet me with a kiss on the cheek that lingered just a moment too long. I was beginning to think you'd stood me up. I laughed, sliding onto the bar stool next to him. And miss out on your charming company? Never. We fell into easy conversation, the alcohol loosening my inhibitions. Jason's hand found its way to my knee, and I didn't push it away. His touch was electric, his charm disarming, and before I knew it, we were stumbling out of the bar, his lips on my neck. My car's just around the corner, he murmured against my skin. I knew I should say no. I knew I should go home to Mark. But the thrill of it all was intoxicating. I nodded, letting him lead me away. What happened next was a blur of hands and lips and skin. The back seat of Jason's car was cramped, nothing like the spacious bed I shared with Mark. But it was exciting, forbidden, everything I'd been craving. Afterward, as I fixed my dress and smoothed my hair, Reality started to creep back in. What had I done? "You okay?" Jason asked, zipping up his jeans. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He dropped me off a block from my house, and I walked the rest of the way home in a daze. My heart was pounding as I opened the front door, carefully crafted alibi on the tip of my tongue. But when I got inside, Mark barely looked up from his meal prep in the kitchen. "Hey, how was yoga?" he asked, crossing the room to kiss my forehead. I swallowed hard and smiled, amazed at how easy it had been to deceive him. It was intense. I'm pretty wiped out. Mark nodded, turning back to his carefully portioned containers. "I made some extra chicken if you're hungry." I shook my head, mumbling something about being too tired to eat. As I headed to the shower, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. I looked the same, but I felt completely different. And the scariest part? I liked it. I woke up feeling invincible. The rush from my encounters with Jason had awakened something in me, a hunger for more excitement, more danger. I craved the thrill of being desired, of pushing boundaries. As I got ready for work, I scrolled through my phone, my heart racing as I read messages from new contacts. There was a private party tonight, exclusive and discreet. The thought of what might happen there sent shivers down my spine. "You're chipper this morning," Mark commented as he entered the kitchen, his massive frame filling the doorway. I barely glanced up from my phone. "Oh, just excited about a work thing." He nodded, accepting my lie without question. I felt a twinge of guilt, but it was quickly overwhelmed by anticipation for the night ahead. The party was everything I'd hoped for, and more. The dimly lit room pulsed with energy, bodies moving in sync to the heavy bass. I lost myself in the crowd, reveling in the attention, the stolen touches, the whispered promises. One encounter led to another, each more daring than the last. I found myself in situations I never would have imagined before. Threesomes, foursomes, stolen moments in dark corners with strangers whose names I'd never know. The more I indulged, the more I wanted. It was like a drug, and I was hopelessly addicted. Weeks passed in a blur of secret rendezvous and heart-pounding close calls. I became an expert at lying to Mark, crafting elaborate stories about girls' nights out and work events. One evening, as I was getting ready to leave for another book club meeting, Mark surprised me. "Hey, I was thinking we could use a change of scenery," he said, his blue eyes twinkling. "How about a weekend getaway? Just you and me, like old times." I froze, my mind racing. "Oh, when were you thinking?" "This weekend. I've already booked a cabin up in the mountains. No cell service, no distractions, just us." My heart sank. A whole weekend with no chance to check my phone, no opportunity for a quick hookup. The thought was suffocating, but I plastered on a smile. "Sounds perfect, babe." The cabin was beautiful, I had to admit, nestled in the woods with a view of the mountains that took my breath away. Mark had gone all out, stocking the fridge with my favorite foods and wines. As we sat on the porch that first evening, watching the sunset, Mark reached for my hand. "Remember our first date?" he asked, his voice soft. "You were so nervous you spilled your drink all over yourself." I laughed, the memory suddenly vivid. "And you gave me your jacket to cover up the stain. Such a gentleman." He squeezed my hand. "I knew then that you were the one. I've never doubted it for a second." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in weeks. His chiseled jaw, those intense blue eyes that used to make me weak in the knees. When had I stopped seeing him? But as the weekend wore on, I found myself growing restless. Mark's quiet intensity, once so comforting, now felt stifling. His massive frame, which I used to find so sexy, seemed to take up too much space. I caught myself checking my phone obsessively, even though I knew there was no signal. By Sunday afternoon, I was climbing the walls. As soon as we got home, I made an excuse about needing to run to the store and locked myself in the car, frantically scrolling through my missed messages. That's when I saw it. An invitation to the most daring encounter yet. 4 men, a motel room, no limits. My pulse quickened at the thought. I spent the next few days in a state of constant anticipation. When Friday finally rolled around, I could barely contain myself. "Going out with the girls tonight," I told Mark, kissing his cheek. "Don't wait up." He nodded, his expression unreadable. I barely noticed his silence as I practically skipped out the door. The motel was seedy, exactly the kind of place you'd expect for this sort of thing. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding. Inside, 4 men waited. I recognized a couple from previous encounters, but the others were new. The air crackled with electric tension. "Ready for some fun?" one of them asked, holding up a length of silk rope. I nodded, adrenaline coursing through my veins. They tied me up, the rope soft against my skin. A blindfold slipped over my eyes, plunging me into darkness. Hands roamed my body, lips pressed against my skin. I heard the click of a camera shutter and felt a thrill of excitement. I was lost in sensation, every touch amplified by my inability to see. The room filled with the sounds of heavy breathing and low moans. Suddenly, there was a deafening crash. The door burst open with such force, I felt the vibration through the floor. A guttural roar filled the air, a sound of pure rage that made my blood run cold. The men around me scrambled, shouting in panic. The blindfold was ripped from my face, and I blinked in the sudden light. My heart stopped. There, filling the doorway with his massive frame, stood Mark. His eyes blazed with a fury I'd never seen before, his fists clenched at his sides. Veins bulged in his neck and arms as he surveyed the scene before him. With a roar, he exploded into action. His fist connected with one man's jaw, the crack of bone audible even over the chaos. The man crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Another tried to swing at Mark, but he was no match for my husband's trained reflexes. Mark's knee came up, catching the attacker in the ribs. I heard the whoosh of air leaving his lungs as he doubled over. 2 of the men made a break for the door. One made it out, but Mark's hand shot out, grabbing the back of the other's shirt. He slammed him against the wall with bone-crushing force. I screamed, begging Mark to stop, but my voice was lost in the cacophony of his rage. He grabbed one of the cameras from the nightstand and smashed it against the floor. The crack of plastic and glass punctuated my pleas. When the room finally went still, Mark turned his gaze to me. I recoiled at the look in his eyes. This wasn't the man I knew. This was a stranger, his face twisted with an emotion I couldn't name. Without a word, he moved towards me. His hands, usually so gentle, were rough as he untied the ropes. I tried to speak, to explain, to apologize, but he raised a hand, silencing me. As soon as I was free, he turned and walked out of the room. His footsteps echoed down the hall, each one driving home the finality of what had just happened. I sat there, exposed and trembling, the full weight of my actions crashing down on me. What had I done? I woke up the next morning, my head pounding and my stomach churning with a nauseating mix of guilt and resentment. The events of the previous night replayed in my mind like a horror movie I couldn't shut off. Mark's silence was deafening, filling every corner of our once cozy apartment with an oppressive weight. I couldn't take it anymore. As Mark stood in the kitchen, methodically preparing his protein shake, I exploded. "We need to talk about this," I blurted out, my voice sharp and trembling. Mark barely glanced at me, continuing to measure out his supplements with precision. His indifference only fueled my anger. "You can't just ignore me forever, Mark," I snapped, stepping closer. This isn't all my fault, you know." He turned then, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, do tell." His calm demeanor infuriated me. I wanted him to yell, to show some emotion, anything but this maddening composure. You've always been so controlling," I accused, the words tumbling out. "Your obsession with MMA, your rigid routines, your impossible standards, it's suffocating. I felt like I was disappearing, becoming just an extension of your perfect little world." I paced the kitchen, gesticulating wildly. I needed to feel alive again, to remember who I was before I became Mark's girlfriend. Can't you see that? Your constant need for structure was killing me. As I ranted, I could feel my conviction growing. Yes, this made sense. I wasn't entirely to blame here. If Mark had just been more flexible, more spontaneous. But as I turned to face him, ready to continue my tirade, I faltered. Mark's expression hadn't changed. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed over his broad chest, watching me with an unsettling calmness. Then I saw it. The faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth, a subtle shift in his brow. My stomach dropped as realization dawned. He wasn't hurt. He wasn't even angry. He was amused. "You done?" Mark asked, his voice laced with a humor that felt like a slap to the face. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. His piercing blue eyes swept over me, filled not with pain or rage, but with a detached curiosity that made me feel impossibly small. "That's quite a story you've concocted there, Sarah," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I particularly enjoyed the part where my dedication to fitness and success somehow forced you to duck random guys in sleazy motels. Very creative." His words hit me like physical blows, each one precisely aimed to shatter my flimsy excuses. I felt my face burning with shame, my carefully constructed narrative crumbling under the weight of his mocking gaze. "Please continue," Mark said, gesturing expansively. "I'm fascinated to hear how my controlling behavior led you to such noble acts of self-discovery. It must have been quite the journey of personal growth." I stood there, humiliated and speechless, as Mark's quiet laughter filled the kitchen. My accusations, which had seemed so righteous moments ago, now felt pathetic and hollow in the face of his dismissive disdain. I walked into my kitchen, feeling the weight of the past week pressing down on my shoulders. The house felt emptier than ever, Mark's absence a palpable void in every room. As I approached the counter to make my morning coffee, my eyes fell on an envelope I hadn't noticed before. My heart skipped a beat, recognizing Mark's neat handwriting on the front. With trembling fingers, I picked it up. It felt heavy, like it contained more than just paper. It held the future I'd carelessly tossed aside. I tore it open, my breath catching in my throat as I unfolded the contents. The word divorce jumped out at me, stark and unforgiving. My eyes scanned the document, taking in phrases like irreconcilable differences and dissolution of marriage. The legal jargon blurred together, but the message was crystal clear. Mark was done with me. "No," I whispered, my voice breaking the silence of the kitchen. "This can't be happening." I read through the papers again and again, hoping I'd misunderstood, that there was some mistake. But with each pass, the reality sank in deeper. Mark had wasted no time in cutting me out of his life. The efficiency of it all felt like a slap in the face. How long had he been planning this? Panic rising in my chest, I stumbled to the living room, clutching the papers to my chest. "I can fix this," I told myself, pacing back and forth. "It's not too late." I grabbed my phone, dialing Mark's number with shaking hands. It went straight to voicemail. "Mark, please," I sobbed into the phone. "We need to talk about this. Don't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please call me back." I ended the call and immediately dialed again, and again, and again. Each time, I left a more desperate message, pleading for another chance, promising to change, to be better. Hours passed in a blur of tears and frantic calls. I alternated between collapsing on the couch in uncontrollable sobs and pacing the house, trying to convince myself that I could still salvage my marriage. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the floor, I finally accepted that Mark wasn't going to answer. I sank to the ground, my back against the wall, feeling utterly defeated. The divorce papers lay scattered around me, a stark reminder of the life I had destroyed. Weeks later, I found myself sitting in a sterile courtroom, emotionally drained and barely holding it together. Mark sat across from me, his face an impassive mask. I couldn't help but remember how expressive those features used to be when he looked at me with love. Now, there was nothing but cold indifference. His attorney stood up, a tall woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. "Your Honor," she began, her voice crisp and professional, "I'd like to present evidence of Mrs. Thompson's infidelity, which forms the basis for this divorce." My heart raced as she methodically laid out her case. Photos from the motel flashed on a screen, each one a damning piece of evidence. Timestamps from text messages between Jason and me scrolled by, painting a picture of a premeditated affair. "As you can see," the attorney continued, "Mrs. Thompson's betrayal was not a one-time lapse in judgment, but a calculated series of deceptions." I felt myself shrinking in my seat, wanting to disappear as witness after witness from the motel incident took the stand, recounting details that made me cringe with shame. When it was my turn to speak, I stood on shaky legs. "Your Honor," I began, my voice barely above a whisper, I know what I did was wrong, but you have to understand, our marriage, it was suffocating me. I glanced at Mark, seeing a flicker of something. Anger, pain, cross his face before it settled back into that infuriating calm. Mark's life is so regimented, so controlled, I continued, gaining a bit of strength. Every day was the same. I felt like I was disappearing, losing myself in his routines. I just needed to feel alive again. As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew how hollow they sounded. The judge's stern gaze bore into me, clearly unimpressed by my justifications. And Mark, God, Mark's face. He wasn't even trying to hide his amusement now, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. I faltered, my carefully prepared speech crumbling under the weight of their judgment. I'm sorry, I finished lamely, sinking back into my chair. Mark's attorney stood for her closing argument, and I braced myself for the final blow. Your Honor, she began, her voice steady and confident. The evidence presented today clearly shows that Mrs. Thompson violated the sanctity of her marriage vows. Her attempts to justify her actions as a response to feeling suffocated are nothing more than a transparent effort to shift blame onto the wronged party. Mr. Thompson has been nothing but a loyal and devoted husband, and he deserves better than the betrayal and dishonesty he has endured. Each word felt like a knife, cutting through what little defense I had left. I couldn't bear to look at Mark, knowing I'd see that same cold amusement in his eyes. The judge's decision came swiftly, his tone leaving no room for argument. Based on the evidence presented, I find in favor of Mr. Thompson. The division of assets will proceed as outlined in the prenuptial agreement. I sat there, stunned, as Mark and his attorney gathered their things. He didn't even glance in my direction as he walked out, his tall frame disappearing through the courtroom doors. And just like that, it was over. My marriage, my security, my life as I knew it, gone in the span of a few hours. Long after everyone had left, I remained in my seat, staring at the empty chair where Mark had been. The finality of it all crashed over me in waves, leaving me hollow with regret. How had I let things come to this? How could I have thrown away everything for a few moments of excitement? As I finally stood to leave, my legs unsteady beneath me, I realized that I was walking out of this courtroom with little more than my name. The life I had taken for granted was now nothing but a memory, and the future stretched out before me, bleak and uncertain. A year had passed since the divorce, but it felt like a lifetime. My once vibrant blonde hair hung limp around my face, and the bags under my eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights. Sighing, I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my social media feed, a habit I'd developed despite knowing it would only make me feel worse. As I scrolled, a familiar face caught my eye, and my heart skipped a beat. It was Jason. Without thinking, I sent him a message. Hey, stranger, long time no see. Want to grab a coffee? To my surprise, he replied almost instantly. Sure, the usual spot in 30? I felt a flutter of excitement as I quickly got dressed, trying to recapture some of the allure I'd once possessed. Maybe this was my chance to rekindle something, to feel wanted again. When I arrived at the cafe, Jason was already there, lounging in a chair with his signature leather jacket draped over the back. I took a deep breath and approached him. Hey, Jason, I said, trying to sound casual. Thanks for meeting me. He looked up, his green eyes sweeping over me with a disinterest that made my stomach churn. Sarah, he nodded, not bothering to stand or offer me a seat. I sat down across from him, fidgeting with my coffee cup. So, how have you been? Jason shrugged, his smirk never leaving his face. Same old, same old. You? I launched into an explanation of my situation, my words tumbling out faster than I could control them. God, Jason, it's been awful. The divorce, losing my job, moving into that tiny apartment. I feel like I've lost everything. As I spoke, I noticed Jason's eyes wandering, glancing at his phone, then at a group of girls at a nearby table. His demeanor was completely detached, almost bored. That's rough, he said, but his tone suggested he couldn't care less. I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment. Jason, I thought maybe we could... He cut me off with a laugh that was more cruel than amused. What, Sarah? Pick up where we left off? Sorry, but I'm not interested in being someone's rebound or pity duck. His words hit me like a slap in the face. I stared at him, speechless, as he stood up. Look, it was fun while it lasted, but that's all it was. Fun. I've got better things to do than listen to your sob story. With that, he walked away without so much as a backward glance. I sat there, frozen, feeling the last shred of my dignity crumble. The man I had risked everything for didn't even see me as worth his time. That night, I found myself once again scrolling through my phone, this time landing on Mark's social media page. His MMA gym had grown into a local success, and there he was, his towering figure gracing photos with smiling clients and admiring fans. One photo in particular caught my eye, Mark at a charity event. His broad shoulders filled the frame, his presence radiating confidence and purpose. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening with regret. What have I done? I whispered to the empty room, tears streaming down my face. The life I had destroyed now seemed like the only thing that had ever truly mattered, and it was gone, forever. Hey everyone, if you found this story gripping and want more jaw-dropping tales, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you're always in the loop, and so you're always in the loop, and so you're always in the loop, and so you're always in the loop.